do have this on my. Make sure I don't. Hello, everybody. I'm just making sure that we are going live, and I'm not seeing us live.
It looks live to me.
Are you seeing it on YouTube?
It says live. 16 seconds.
Okay.
We've been live. Oh, look, everything's back.
There's a delay. That's why I'm checking it.
It says live.
Yep. See, I had an echo. All right. We're good. We're good. And we already have Michael is here and Vegan Lynn Cat. I haven't seen you guys in forever. And Sabrina's here. And thank you guys for being here. I feel, all right, I'm not going to lie, I feel a little rusty. It's been about 8 months since I've done an interview. I've been on a little bit of hiatus. I haven't been on YouTube in a while. So, yeah, I'm a little rusty. So, I'm glad. I feel good that my regular friends are here. My YouTube friends are here. Everybody, I am so thrilled to have author and activist Jay VanLandingham joining us.
Thank you.
Recently, I was turned on to your writings, and I've already, well, we'll just get into all that as we go. This is going to be a very organic conversation. I don't usually interview fiction writers. I told Jay this. I don't usually interview fiction writers, so I didn't really know what to ask. But we got together when I got my book. By the way, I will show your book.
Yay. Look at that. That's amazing. Congratulations.
It looks like the Bible, but it's large print, and I've already started reading it. It's a very easy read.
Yeah.
So
it's not intimidating at all.
Yeah, it's not War and Peace or anything.
It's not a Bible. It's not a Bible. It's not real super heavy.
It looks it's big, but it's big print. So, but anyway, we got together, and I said, well, I don't really know what to ask fiction writers. I usually interview people about their lives, and when it comes to fiction, I'm not, and a writer, I'm not really sure what to ask. But I felt like this is a very important way to be an activist. I mean, a very important form of activism is this writing. Let's get into let's just start from the beginning.
Okay.
I had said that it's hard to interview for me, and then you made me feel very at ease because you're very easy to talk to. And you made me feel really at ease. And instead of me putting too many questions down, I have a few things that I put thoughts on paper, but I figured that this can easily be organic here.
Yeah.
So let's just start with where did you grow up?
I was born in Covington, Kentucky.
Okay.
And I grew up. I've bounced around the tri-state area of Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, but I was born in Covington, and so I like to walk around in my bare feet. I've lived in Cincinnati, like Avondale, Price Hill, more inner city areas when I was a kid. And then I lived in Fort Thomas, Kentucky for a while, which is a lot more, I don't know how suburb, not my kind of place, not very diverse. That's where I went to high school. So I've been around Cincinnati area my whole life.
Okay. So tell me, at what age did you start writing, or did you become interested in writing?
So when I was a kid, I was like, what do they call it? A latchkey kid, where after school, my parents were still working. So I had to go somewhere until they were off. And so I was in an after school program, and it was November, and I was 7. So this was 1987, and we had an after school teacher. It's funny because I always remember this, and I think I'm always going to remember it because it was so significant for me. But I walked into the classroom. There was only one other kid in there that day, probably because it was close to Thanksgiving holiday. And there was this round table, and there was this whole mountain of fabric and yarn and just stuff. And I always liked to create anyway, but I'm looking at this like, what is this thing? Like, what are we doing? And the teacher was like, you're going to make a book. Not you're going to write a story. You're going to make a book and you're going to write it yourself. And the girl across from me.
So you're like going to make the binding and the cover, the whole shebang.
That's why the fabric was there. And like I was piecing it all together in my head. Like, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know how books were made. I was 7 and I loved reading and I just didn't, when you're a kid, you don't really think about, well, who makes this stuff? And so the girl across from me was like, well, I can't write a book. And, this is corny and it's cliche, but it's true. The teacher was like, never say can't, you can do anything, kind of that thing. She really said it.
Well, I think that's why she was doing the project, wasn't she?
Yeah. And I don't it's funny because I don't remember writing the story. I don't remember illustrating it, but I came home and we got a grade, which is interesting. I got like an A++ on it. So I don't know why we were graded. Maybe it wasn't after school. It's so long ago now, but I remember the feeling of lying down on the floor in the living room and opening this book I had made myself and looking at the illustrations and looking at the story and like the feeling of accomplishment that gave me. Like I did this all by myself, like 100%.
Do you still have it?
I do still have it. I wish if you want, I can get it out and I can show you, but
show us. I want to see it.
I've got it. I've actually got all of my stories. Hold on, I'll get it out. I've got all kinds of stuff. After that, I just kept going and I just kept writing stories and making them myself. This is the first one.
Oh, wow. And you drew that? Did you paint that?
No, this is the fabric that they...
Oh, okay. I was like, wow.
But it's just so fascinating that I'm an animal rights person now because this is complete opposite. I was so into my illustrations and drawing what was happening in the story, but like the poor turkey got killed by this Indian. It was Thanksgiving. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is not like.
So you were already understanding that concept.
Well, yeah, a little. I guess
in a bit, or like probably subconsciously.
I knew it was like, obviously this is, if you want to eat an animal, you got to kill it. But yeah, I mean, I started just making all of these little stories. Like I just wrote one about like David Copperfield, the magician, because we went to see his show and I loved it. And I was like, I'm going to write a story about it. And I had a cat that swallowed a needle and had to go to the vet. And it was a big ordeal. The cat was fine, but I wrote a story about my cat and we had pet ferrets and I loved my ferrets. So I wrote stories about the ferrets going on adventures. I just kept going and going and I loved it. And then I guess in high school, I always journaled. But then in high school, I think I started writing like an actual novel. It's really bad, like awful stuff, like bad writing. Like it was very melodramatic as high school stuff would be. And
as we all are.
Yeah, depressed, like super depressed stuff. Like, oh my gosh, my poor mom was like worried that I needed to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist because maybe something was wrong. But I was using.
I just became death rock and hid in my.
Well, there you go. Right? Yeah, I just was processing. The writing became like a way for me to process, like you said, probably subconscious stuff, but also just stuff that was happening in childhood, and it just became a really good. It wasn't a hobby. It became like I had to do it. Like I have to write. I can't not write. So that's how it all started. Never stopped.
So let's progress. It's like, all right. So when did you all this stuff in your writing obviously was about a lot about animals and stuff. When did you start to make the connection and become vegan?
I actually, this is July, so this month marks 9 years for me.
Okay.
And I didn't make the interestingly, I think I was in my late 20s. I was dating someone who wanted to go vegan, and I was like, no, I don't want to go vegan. I don't want to eat the gross food. I think it's nasty. We went to a vegan. We went to an Earth Day, like one of those Earth. What do they call them? They don't do them anymore, but the potlucks.
Yeah.
And I thought the food was gross, and I just didn't. I was not interested or ready. I even watched a Tyson chicken video, one of the really awful ones,
Yeah.
and it disturbed me, but I was not. I mean, the cognitive dissonance was so great.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready. And then I got into social work and I went to school for the master in social work. But I was doing that about food scarcity, poverty, inequality. I was thinking about all those things. And then I started dating someone. This was after I graduated and I was a social worker at this point, who was a vegan. And, she one day was like, well, I want to go on a cleanse. I want to do a 30-day cleanse. It had nothing to do with veganism. I just wanted to try the cleanse. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, let me try it. I tried it, and we did like this food stamp challenge where I tried going vegan on a food stamp budget. Like, I started getting really political about it. The cleanse made me feel so good, like just really opened my eyes to how much better I was feeling without processed foods. And all of a sudden I was like, I think I want to go vegan, but it was health reasons. And then we started watching the documentaries, Forks Over Knives. I mean, back then it was like, I think Cowspiracy. I don't remember when I got my hands on my copy of The World Peace Diet by Will Tuttle, but somewhere in there I got that copy and I started reading that. And then I started getting really angry and really fueled about animal rights. So it became an ethical thing for me. And so it just started progressing from there. And now it's a real spiritual concept. It's my belief system, do no harm. And how can I do that if I'm going to participate in the use of animals for anything? So now I do my best to be as close to 100% vegan as I can.
Yeah, it was an evolution. It's funny because it sounds a little bit like my evolution. It's like everything started to connect. Ahimsa, justice, whether all these things came together, whether it started because of my love for animals or looking for healthier things. It all just started to. The more I learned, the more everything came together and connected, and all like was so intricate or intrinsic with each other.
Yeah.
You know that it all came to combine. Now it's funny because you mentioned Will Tuttle, and I've been on a yoga journey myself. I just was taking classes recently to become a yoga teacher at World Peace Yoga,
Mm-hmm.
and he is tied with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how did you come about that? Did you get involved with World Peace Yoga, or
My ex was involved with World Peace Yoga, had also done the yoga teacher training back when I started going vegan. So we would go to the potlucks, we would go to some of the events.
I thought that's what you were talking about.
I would go to some of I always liked, I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I got into yoga for mental health reasons and physical health
Me
reasons.
too.
And, yeah, meditation and then Buddhism as a result. Because I grew up in Christianity. And I spent 20 years in the Christian church. And in the back of my mind, it was always, well, but what does it say about animals? And it doesn't, the Bible, it says varying things, but it contradicts itself too. So it doesn't really matter. But
Yeah.
a friend gave me a copy of the World Peace Diet because she was trying to go vegan and she wasn't really committed, and she's like, I have this book here by Will Tuttle. I think you probably really like it. And I absorbed it. I mean, I just absorbed that book. And that was somewhere around the time that Sentient started to, I didn't come up with the idea. So different authors might say different things about this, but I feel like it came to me. I feel like it was intended. I'm a very spiritual person, so it depends. Not everyone's going to agree with this, but it was meant to happen. It was a story that I feel like was floating around, and I just, based on my being vegan and I guess open, I picked up on it. And then it wouldn't leave me alone, and it wouldn't leave me alone. And then I'm reading Will Tuttle, and then he came and did a talk, I think at UC, somewhere around that time. And there was another book he had edited, which was The Circles of Compassion. And that's a great book too, if you have not read it. He only edited that one, but it talked a lot about the intersectionality between animal rights, homophobia, racism. And then it really got me thinking, because that's the hardest part for me now, is it's really hard to communicate that intersectionality with people without offending someone and making it like, well, then you're not talking about racism, or you're saying it's more important than racism, or it's more important than sexism, or transphobia. It's like, but it's all connected, like you were saying. Like, it all starts to come together, and we have one because of the other, because of the other, because of the other. And then, I agree with a lot of what Will Tuttle had to say about herdism and the beginning of the use of animals. Excuse my background, I'm in a noisy city. That's great too. The use of animals for capital. And everyone, I think, has a different viewpoint on that, but I got involved with all of that. And then at some point, they offered a World Peace Diet Facilitator training at World Peace Yoga. And I participated in that, which was great, because Will and his wife, they both came. They did the whole training. It was a whole weekend thing. And I got really immersed in that and learned how to talk to people and facilitate a conversation about veganism as it pertains to animals, not health, not environment, but specifically the ethics of using animals. And so that's kind of how I got involved in all that. It was kind of amazing how it just started to snowball, but in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because I had actually been an activist for a while before. I'd done yoga back in my 20s. I'll be 53 this year, so. But I had done yoga back in my 20s. I didn't make a connection. I had a boyfriend that was vegetarian. I never heard of veganism. Ended up moving in the middle of nowhere, and for health reasons, because I was getting in my 30s, was gaining weight and couldn't lose it. And that's when I started on the internet and started getting emails from, about the seal hunt, and it all came together. And then, funny enough, I came back to yoga for mental health and for overall health, because I'm getting older, and just kind of a new direction, or just, anyway, I went to World Peace Yoga. I had been there before, and I just decided, my baby boy, my dog had died, and he was my whole life. And I was in deep depression, so I decided, this is the time I need to maybe find a path with yoga. And it worked. I mean, it helps if I practice.
Yeah.
But I had been there before when Will Tuttle had done a talk. He had done a reading of his book, and they were doing a potluck. And I didn't participate because I didn't bring a dish, and so I just came for the talk. But I was already vegan. I had been vegan for a long time. So that's why I went to the talk. And I never read the book. And his reading, I thought, oh God, I was a hardcore activist. I was like, this is so hippy dippy, so walking on. And I just felt, I was like, I wasn't really convinced. I respected him and what he did. I knew who he was, but I was like, he's being too easy on people. It wasn't until just recently when I took the classes to become a teacher, and it's required reading for the class, that I finally read it.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, it's not light on people. He's hardcore. He tells it as it is. It's a
Yeah.
great book.
And I think he says,
Like, how did I make a judgment without reading this?
well, and I think he says at some point in the book, it might be more towards the end, about like, what do we do or how do we act? And he says, I know he said in somewhere in his literature at some point, like, you know, I'm not the activist type, but we need the activists. You know, we need the pacifists. We need people
But
out
the thing
there.
is, he was an activist with his book. It's just
He
getting
was.
somebody
He's
to read it.
talking
He's
about
somebody
more
like me.
direct activism, like getting out and trying to save the animals, getting out there with the transport trucks and maybe trying to stop them, and actual doing, like, he doesn't do protests, like he won't do that kind of stuff. But he'll say in the book, like, this is, you know, this is important too, and
Yeah.
we need all of that. And that was always my own personal feeling about it, because I can be a bit more hippy dippy about it myself.
Yeah.
And I try to be compassionate with everyone, and then it's a balance of, you know, but then we're still allowing for so much suffering of animals if we continue to be too compassionate, because that's what we've done for so long, about, you know, what human needs are. Well, I need my meat.
But you know, that's I've always said that's why it takes all kinds of activism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, maybe he's not going out on the streets, like, for example, AV or something like that, but his reach, I mean, his book sold millions,
I know.
you know, and I didn't think that World Peace Yoga was really doing activism until I took the yoga teacher training. And I was like, oh wow, they're not letting people off the hook about what this, you know, about using animals. They really use it in their, and I have a lot more respect after that, you know, because I was like, I didn't realize the activism they really were doing with this yoga studio.
Absolutely. And then, you know, of course, now they do the Veg Fest every year, and they host that. And
Yeah.
um,
But that's the thing, a lot of yoga studios, they'll just, you know, it's for health, or, you know, like, namaste, whatever, you know, they really do
they do.
walk the talk. And I think that's why I was so drawn to them, because I had done yoga in the past, but I never really went back. But I remember going there and feeling like it was more of a spiritual thing than a, like, let's show off thing, you know?
Yes, I would agree with having
Yeah.
experienced some of the classes, and definitely the events. Like, you know, it's very much more about potluck. And hey, there's Amber. Speaking of
Yeah.
which, and the events that they do there, it's all still, it's a mission,
Yeah.
about world peace. And like
They
you
do
said,
encompass it all. They do.
yeah,
But that's why I was saying, it's like, it takes all kinds of activism. Like, he's reaching people through his books. He might not be going out on the streets, but that's what you're doing too. And that's what I want to get to here. You're doing a different kind. And this is why it was hard for me, because most stuff you read about animal liberation is talking about, like, what people have done, like true stories, you know?
yes,
And what you're doing is you're reaching out, you're doing fiction writing, and it's kind of futuristic and dystopian, and for people in that genre, it's great that you are able to, you never see that, you don't see people writing fiction about animal rights, um or you know, reaching that audience, and that's why I think it's really important.
yeah.
I mean, have you seen anybody else writing fiction about animal rights or animal
I
liberation?
do, and I have to apologize because I don't remember the author's name, but Kevin O'Connor actually told me about another author, and I think their stuff is also on Amazon, but it's a thriller, and I think it's a series about someone who is doing like some animal rights work. It's a fiction series about a character that's doing some animal rights work, um, but you know, they keep getting kind of derailed or stopped by the agriculture business, or things keep happening when they're trying to find out what's going on with animal agriculture. and I have yet to pick up those books and read them, but there's only a little bit. I mean, it's what, maybe like 1% of all fiction that's out there really addresses the issue of animal agriculture or
I
animal.
mean, I think there's a lot of things that touch on animal rights subjects, but don't make it obvious. And so people watching it, unless they're vegan, don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, an example would be the novel Migrations. I have a copy of it, and I'm so bad with author names. It came out about 2 years ago, and it's about climate change, and it's fiction. It's literary fiction, and it is about a reality, a near future reality where animals actually don't really exist anymore. Period. Like they are dying out. So, which to me is very frightening to think about, being in a world where actually things have progressed so much that we don't even have animals. Seeing, certain types of migratory birds or owls or elephants or anything like that would have been rare if you could see it at all. And so that book to me is very much an animal rights book. She did not intend for it to be that way because it's about climate change, but it is about the reality that if we don't address things, we are going to lose animals. It doesn't talk about animal agriculture, but it still talks about, the excessive sea industry and sea fishing and industrial fishing. It really covers a lot of that aspect, which I think is very important because I do think people overlook that. And that book got a lot of awards. I think it was a New York Times bestseller. So it did very well.
Yeah, I mean, speaking, you were talking about a series that somebody else had done. Speaking of that, let's get around to the online series that you did, which was the Animalist Code.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're up to 4 in that series. I've read those.
Yep.
And I've read those, but tell me how you came. How did that come about?
It came about during the COVID pandemic. I had a lot of time on my hands. I was working from home, and I was already working on Sentient, and Sentient was getting closer to being finished. And for some reason, I think because I had time on my hands, here comes another siren, so I apologize, as if I can control it. But I wanted to write. Okay, so I'll back up a little bit and just say Sentient originally was supposed to be an adult create your own adventure project. That's how it started out. I wanted adults to actually participate in the voting to see if it would get them to think a little bit more clearly about the characters and actual subject matter.
Sentient or Animalist Code?
Sentient in the beginning.
Sentient came around as an idea first?
Yeah, because Sentient is 8 years old now. So 8 years ago when I first started it, I started it as
8 years in the making. Wow.
It started as a create your own adventure project. It was called the Interactive Fiction Experience. I have it up on my wall, a poster of it, but we used to do episodes where people would vote on what happened next. Well, that didn't work out for many reasons. So I just started writing Sentient as a novel, not as a create your own adventure. And then I still wanted to do a create your own adventure for adults. So I decided I would do a different subject about someone who actually tries to save animals. So I was researching the actual animal save organizations. We don't have one that's local, that's active as far as I'm aware, but I've tried to research.
I actually started since Animal Save, but I gave up on it because we don't have any slaughterhouses.
Yeah, we don't have any nearby.
Thank goodness.
We don't. So I researched some of that, and I really liked the concept of going out and trying to save animals. But obviously, with it being fiction, I enhanced it to making it a lot more dramatic. Not that saving animals is not dramatic, because obviously it is. But I wanted that to be a create your own adventure. So initially it was actually titled The Vegan Vigilante. And it was supposed to be about this vegan hardcore animal rights person who is also a social worker by day, animal rights activist by night. And I was wanting to live vicariously through this character because I'm like, that's what I want to do. But I don't have the courage, I guess, to do that necessarily. So I'm going to write about it instead. So that's how the series came up at first. And I was having so many problems doing the create your own adventure structure because I was already writing another create your own adventure for kids that was completely separate, and I'm still working on it. So I threw out the create your own adventure concept, and I couldn't use the name Vegan Vigilante because it had already been trademarked. So I had to come up with a new name. So I came up with the Animalist Code because it's kind of a play on words a little bit, as in like being an animalist, someone who believes in animals being equal to humans, and what the code of ethics would be for someone who is an animalist, but also a character who we find out in the first book has some kind of special powers, and we don't really know like why. And I don't want to give anything away, but it has to do with transgenics. It has to do with DNA. It has to do with the use of animal DNA for the food industry, and that. So this it just started to evolve until it became what it is now.
So speaking of that, like, how much of this like intersects with your own life? Like, how much research did you have to do for it? How much is like, a reflection of yourself? How much of you is in this?
So anything that has to do with transgenics or the industry, I had to research, or I had to ask someone, I had to interview people. But Emerson Howell, who is the main character, is a trans, female to male. I'm also trans. So there is a parallel in the story about change, bodily change, accepting our bodies as they change, that I think, separate from the animal rights issue, trans people might really be able to relate to, because the character throughout all these episodes goes through these changes. And
Yeah, when I was reading that, it struck me. I was like, I wonder how much of this is like to
yeah,
really impact, like not just changing your gender, but
yeah,
really going through feeling completely foreign body to
yes,
yourself,
yes,
and how much of that like really um, intersects there. It's to really drive home the point of how it would feel to, well, not just transgender, but also like to be just a separate species. It's like, I mean, are we really that different? We're just different species.
we're
It's
just
all,
different species,
yeah.
and we still experience, the pain, potential suffering, hopefully not. But yeah, I mean, anything about Emerson aside, Emerson as a social worker, I still work as a social worker. So Emerson's job as a social worker is a similar job that I held in Cincinnati as well. So a lot of the clients that he talks about in the story are clients that I've actually had, that I have gleaned from my own life and then put into the story. And there's certain relational aspects that are kind of not really similar, but we are all
Well, I
we're
suppose you
all,
always have to put some aspect of yourself into
yeah,
the characters,
yeah,
in
yeah.
order to connect with them,
It's
or an
very,
aspect that you don't maybe show but want to be, in a way, or
definitely more of the animal rights activism that Emerson is able to get away with doing. I have obviously wanted to do, but it seems as though it's in my nature to write about it instead. And so, yeah, definitely autobiographical in the sense of the trans journey, um, and just the frustration of being vegan in a society where it's not really supported. I mean, right now it's kind of becoming very supported, but in this dystopian society, virtually nobody is vegan. It's just not a thing anymore.
So
And
that brings me to an interesting question, though, and I
mhm.
don't want to get too political here, but you have a lot of trans characters in your as your main characters. Um, Being accepted seems more accepted to being trans than it does to be vegan in your story. How do you feel about your own life?
I think that's true, and it's interesting. That's accurate, because I was on another podcast with someone who's non-vegan, and we were talking about writing, and he had asked me, "Are you going to find, or are you already finding that as you become more well known, or people know about your writing, that you're going to get pushback for being trans?" And I said, "No." I said, I'm actually not getting much pushback for being trans. I think with things changing with Roe v. Wade, I think it's going to be a more scary environment. So I think that could make things different for me. But I told him, I said, actually, I'm getting a lot more pushback for being vegan, and particularly animal rights. I mean, on Facebook, people just have said nasty things. When I have, let's say I'll do an ad for Animalist Code, and people will say things about the ads. They'll go into the comments and just leave nasty comments, but they don't say anything about it because they haven't read it. So obviously, if they've read it, they might say something about that too, like, oh, it's stupid, trans, whatever. But I definitely agree. I think the vegan aspects are more challenging for people, and I don't know if that's because it's a more direct threat to their identity than me being trans. It's like, well, you're trans, like that doesn't affect me, but don't come attack my food.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. So we both live in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
A lot of the book, a lot of the Animalist Code.
Yep.
Takes place, or all of it, I should say, takes place in Cincinnati so far. You still have a couple series coming up, right?
There are 2 more episodes left. So the fifth episode comes out August 7th. And that actually is, I think it might be my favorite episode. And I love the episode. What I love about these episodes, I'm going off tangent a little bit here, but I just want to emphasize about Animalist Code and Sentient both is, yes, it's about climate change. Yes, it's about animal rights, but more than that, and I don't mean to say more importantly, it's really about relationships. It's really about these characters who are trying to do the right thing, trying to fight for something that's right. And, they build, friendships with each other. These are people who become very deep friends and are trying to be there for each other too. And so there's a friendship element to both books that I'm really trying to drive home, is just the importance of relationships. And the fifth episode definitely has some very sweet aspects of the nature of friendship, of coming together, because that's ultimately what we're going to have to do if we're going to succeed, is we have to come together and we have to work together. And so, yeah, there's a fifth episode that comes out August 7th, and then the sixth episode will be the final episode that wraps everything up, so to speak. And that one will come out in October.
Now, again, without giving too much away, we've kind of touched on it, but the genetics and all that stuff that you bring up in Animalist Code, and the dystopian world that they're living in, and the scarcity of water and food, and yeah, messing with genetics, we already said. How much do you think is that possible, or where are we at right now?
It's all possible, because it's based on research. So this is stuff that's already happening. As a matter of fact, right before this interview, someone sent me a Facebook message who is in the process of reading some of the books, and it was a story about drought out in Nevada. And this, I believe it was a lake. It's gone completely dry. And
I think I've seen that, actually.
Yeah, and she's talking about, look, like, this is our potential future here out west. So the stuff that I wrote.
Well, look, California is already a desert, and they have all the dairy industry out there taking all the water.
That's what I'm, and that's covered in Sentient. You'll read, as you read further in, it goes a little bit more into that in the first book. But Animalist Code, what I like about Animalist Code is that because it takes place in the same world as Sentient, it's 5 years earlier. So it really goes into like the terrorist attack that happens on U.S. soil, the debate about whether it really was a terrorist attack or if some kind of industry was involved. But as far as the transgenics piece, in other countries, China in particular, they are already experimenting on the use of human DNA with pigs to see how that could help with fighting disease. I mean, I did research by interviewing.
I think they've been doing that stuff for quite a while. Like,
yeah, oh yeah. I
in
mean,
the animal world, they've been doing.
I think anything that humans can do to use animals to improve humanity, they will do it.
I mean, we already use pig hearts and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's happening. I mean, I interviewed someone who works for Ancestry.com, and they deal with DNA all the time. And I asked him, I said, what would be some possibilities of using, in what ways would we use human DNA with animal DNA or with animals? And he was like, think about Alzheimer's, think about longevity of life. If we found, what if we could find the code for longevity, and then we use that code to then insert into animal DNA so that the animals can live longer. And if they can live longer, then guess what? We can use them longer, right? We can use them more if they live longer.
Well, some of them, though, I think that the point is to kill them sooner, like a fraction of their life. It depends on the animal, I think.
Yeah, that is definitely, obviously, the idea of animal agriculture as it is right now. But in the fiction world that has been created here, it's the concept of we don't have the same amount of space as we used to for animal agriculture. So would it make more sense instead of, having animals' lives limited, if one animal lives longer and we can get more use out of it, not for meat necessarily, but for, let's say, pregnancy and that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't go into a lot of detail about it, but it was mostly just looking at Animalist Code only just started to tap into what the industry maybe could do with transgenics and animals, and experimenting on how can we use this DNA to our advantage. And so it doesn't, it's not like it answers anything. It's not like it says, well, this is specifically what the industry is going to do with transgenics, but it definitely touches, I hope it touches on it enough to just make the point that we can use human DNA to see if it will help improve animal agriculture.
And make people think about
what
we're headed towards.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you said you started writing Sentient before the Animalist Code. The Animalist Code takes place in Cincinnati, which but this Sentient takes place in the West Coast. How much research did you have to do for that?
So a good portion of Sentient, if not majority of it, takes place in Wyoming. Some of it takes place in Denver, a little bit in Idaho. So I flew out to Denver. I've been to Denver a couple of times, but I drove from Denver up through Wyoming to what's called Hell's Half Acre, which is this enormous canyon that's just sitting in Wyoming right before Yellowstone. It's probably about an hour. I don't know how far away from Yellowstone it is, but I went and I saw that. And then I also interviewed a woman who lives in Wyoming and who has lived in Wyoming all her life about the nature, the time of day, the temperature, we did a very long, extensive, I think like 2-hour interview just about Wyoming and about the environment there. And then I did that drive, and then I met her there, which was really neat. And she took me around and showed me some places like, this might be good for your novel. This might be good for your novel, because I hadn't gotten very far on the finalizing of the plot. So that helped me decide what needed to happen in the book and what could happen in the book and what was realistic enough to happen in the book. And I felt like Wyoming was a very good option of a state to utilize as a state that's kind of like, the nature there is still so vastly untouched. that it was designed to be, well, this is what we want nature to be, and this is what we want to hold on to. But if the industry continues in the direction that it's going, eventually Wyoming's going to become like Nevada. It's going to become like California. If we don't stop what's happening, this drought is just going to continue, and we're going to lose. So that's why I wanted it to take place out west, in particular, to really show the reality of drought. That it's more realistic out west than it is here, although we're seeing changes here now too. So.
Oh yeah, we are. So, what do you see for the futures of these stories? I mean, do you see like doing well, you already said that it's going to be last of Animalist Code is going to be the 6th in the series, but I mean, like jumping off this because sorry, hold on, I forgot to turn off my phone. I get scam calls.
That's a good alarm there. That's that'll get your attention.
Now I lost my thought.
You were asking me
not to give anything away, but is there any like crossover from one of the series to the other? And if so, are we going to see that kind of continue itself?
So there is a character in the Animalist Code series that crosses over into Sentient. It is not a major character, but it is an important character. People will not miss anything if they don't read the Animalist Code, but it does add to the story, and it adds a lot to the background that you won't necessarily get in Sentient, because Sentient kind of just dives right into the story. But Sentient is the first book in a series. So this is just the beginning for Sentient. And so hopefully the second book, in the next year or two, year and a half, somewhere around there, that should be coming out. So it will start to kind of build some momentum. And
so it will be a series.
Yeah, Sentient is the first in a series. It's a trilogy.
Oh, okay, great. Mm-hmm. That's good to know, because I just started reading, so I haven't hit the end. So I didn't know if you left us hanging. And
it has a nice wrap up, and also it opens a door.
Okay. So what other projects do you think you're going to have under your belt here?
So
I mean, this is like spreading out into new ideas for you.
Yes, I do have a kids create your own adventure project. It's called Animals of Justice. And that is a tried and true create your own adventure, 2 choices, pick where you want to go next. And it's still about climate change. It actually takes place in the same world as Sentient as well, in that there's still the same drought and that kind of thing. But it's kind of, if you think of it almost as a parallel world, because the characters don't know about each other, and the characters in the Animals of Justice series are animals who were genetically modified. We go back to this genetics piece again. They were genetically modified in a testing facility to the point where they developed superpowers, which was, that was not the intent, was for these animals to develop superpowers, but they do. And as a result, they can actually escape this testing facility, but then they want to go back and save the other animals. So it's all about going back, trying to save the other animals, the journey and things getting messed up in the meantime, meeting new friends. But it comes with an activity book that can be used in Montessori's, or it can be used for homeschooling. And the idea of the activity book is to learn as they read the story about things like climate change, about things like zoology, biology, ecology, all of these things.
Wow. That I'd be interested in.
I love it. I love it. Honestly, I love Sentient. I love Animalist Code, and Animals of Justice is like a real passion project for me because of
how hard is it to do something like that, where you if somebody chooses one story or another, you've got to have something ready for that. It's
done. The first book is finished.
Okay.
So it is like an actual paperback book where you have to create the paths. So there are, I know there are well over 100 paths I had to write. And it took, again, I started it during the pandemic. So it's 2022 now, right? So it's been 2 years on the first book, and that is a long time. And it was very frustrating, and I wanted to give up many times. And my writing coach was like, "You can't give up on this one just because it's hard. It's going to be worth it." And she was right. So that one's done, and
Well, I imagine it's a really good brain exercise to write something like that.
yeah, it's kept
And
me
track.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've had to keep really good notes, and then I've had, I had at one point I had my wall like covered in large papers where I was keeping track of the paths and
So
literally
threads going from one
threads
to the
everywhere.
like
I'm like,
like
don't
the
come in my yeah,
NCIS or whatever.
don't come in my house. You're gonna think I'm like a crazy person. I got these threads everywhere. I'm like, what the hell is this? I swear it's this fiction. I'm not correct. I just am writing this stuff. I got to keep track of it, and you have to be able to visualize and see it. And on a computer screen or on a Word document, like you can't see that. So for me, being a visual person, is like I have to. It's like I want to see all
Oh,
of it.
I would have to do the same thing.
Yeah, which has been a blast, and so I will be working on the second. I have enough um, characters and plots to make 30 or more books of that alone.
Wow.
So that should keep me busy maybe the rest of my life.
Well, that's great, and
Yeah.
I hope it's successful.
I
So.
do too. I trust me. If it's not, then I guess I got to go back to social work.
Well, besides that, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, you are associated with do you do like spiritual, like coaching?
I do. Yeah. So my official website is called thespiritualcreativecoach.com.
I did not include that under the video, but I will. I will
That's
add that.
okay. I do coaching um, by interest only, meaning I don't promote it. But if someone contacts me and they want coaching, we can talk and we can discuss it and see if the packages that I have would work. Essentially, what it is, someone doesn't have to be spiritual to work with me. I'm a spiritual person. That's why I call myself a spiritual creative coach. But the concept of it is basically something as simple as writing coaching. If someone needs some writing coaching, like they've got a project they want to work on and they need some accountability and they need help, I can help with that. Or it can be more advanced as like, I want to learn how I can have a more spiritual, creative life for myself. And what does that look like? It could be a musician, it could be an author, it could be an artist, someone who defines himself as a creative person who just wants more. It's life coaching. It's a frou-frou way of saying I'm a life coach. With all my years of therapy experience and social work experience and writing experience, I decided, if I can help someone too, I will also see if I can do that. So yes, I do offer some coaching.
Awesome. So I'll add that information under the video after we're done here,
Cool, thank you.
so that everybody can find that. But I've already left your information about where to find your website, your Facebook, your Instagram, and find Sentient on Amazon. Ben Gilks in the comments said that they pre-ordered Sentient, which comes out tomorrow, guys, officially.
Yes.
And has bought the Animalist Code episode 1.
Yes.
So thank you so much for that. Again, guys, this is a book, Sentient. I had pre-order and got my signed copy ahead of time. But tell us about the availability. We did talk a little bit about this. It's only available in the U.S.
So the ebook is actually worldwide available. I was able to make that change. So if someone were in the UK or another part of the country, you want to get the ebook, you can get the ebook. It is on Amazon for the first 90 days. It'll be only on Amazon, and then it will start to go into bookstores and do more distribution after that. And then the paperback, US only for now. Hopefully that will change. But you can order the paperback on Amazon as well. So I've got, a Goodreads page. I've got an Amazon page. People can find me on there, follow me so they know what's going on. You can join my newsletter, and I keep people up to date on there as well, which you can do from my website. So
Awesome. Well, Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Stacey.
You're so easy to talk to. You really are. I mean, I could probably talk to you forever, but
thank you.
But I mean, seriously, very easy read, guys.
Mhm.
Start out with the online series if
Mhm.
you want a sampling of the writing or the storyline. It's really good, and
Yep.
I really do recommend this. I'm only a couple of chapters in, but still an extremely easy read, just
Yeah.
like the series Animalist Code. But I really enjoyed it. So I don't know what else to say, but you made this go so easily. It's been a while.
Yay.
Like I said, I felt really rusty and a little bit nervous because
Yeah.
I've been on hiatus for about 8 months. I need to get back into this, but life takes over sometimes. But
Well,
I've been lucky enough in the meantime to meet you,
yay.
and I'm so happy about that because it really has um, I'm really excited about this project because I really do think that's why I put it in the title, The Future of Animal
Yeah,
Rights,
I thought
is
that was
to
really cool.
reach out in we need to reach out in all areas.
Yeah, we do.
And I think this is the way to go. So I wish you luck with everything you do in the future. I'm going to be watching it closely. And well, I hope we keep it. We're going to, I'm still going to see you around.
Yeah, and I've got a launch party in 2 weeks, so
That's
obviously
right. I'm going to be at that because it's right after my birthday.
don't forget to get a ticket so I can keep track of how many people are coming. But remember, it is a fundraiser for a local vegan food pantry. So whatever you
I
want,
didn't. I don't know if I got a ticket or not. I will.
double check. I don't
Yeah.
think I saw your name, but double check and make sure you didn't. But again, you can pay whatever you want, but the funds go. I don't make any proceeds for this event. We're just there to have fun and have a blast. So
I didn't even know we had a local vegan food
we
pantry. I
do.
know. I know that I think Dayton does. When we were up there for the
Yep.
vegan awards recently, the first vegan
So
awards.
what I'll say very quickly is it's called Third Way Peace Fellowship. It's in Northside. Again, when you come to the party, you can learn more about it. But we are also starting a vegan spirituality group there as well, which will start in the fall. Myself and the organizer, his name is Jono. We are going to be doing vegan spirituality meetups too. So
Awesome.
yeah.
All right. I've given the basics of your information, but anything else you want to give me? And I usually ask this. I should have done this before we did this interview. But any other links that you want me to include, I will add that to this video, and everybody can find that. Of course, after we're done here,
Mhm.
this video can always be viewed at any time because it will post to my YouTube channel. So
Yeah, and I'll post it as well. And I just appreciate the opportunity. It was very meaningful for me, and it was great to meet you and to connect with you. And animal rights people are, the work everybody does, I think, is admirable. And
I'm thrilled to know that there's people out there doing different things,
oh,
like
me
different
too.
approaches like this,
Yeah,
and just
yeah.
really and really, you're in Cincinnati, so that's awesome.
Yay! We'll see if I
So
stay put.
I can say when you become really big and this
Yeah.
becomes like a TV series, and I can say I knew Jay when.
Well, hopefully you'll be able to say, yeah, I still know Jay.
That's true.
Let's put it like that.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go and
Thanks,
say goodbye
Stacey.
to everybody. Thank you so much, Jay. I hope I see you soon.
Nice
And
to meet you.
I'll see you at the party. I'm going to try to make it to that party. I have a lot of boarding dogs right now, but
Well, you can always stop by.
I need to get out.
Yeah, you need to get out. Come on, Stacey.
It was like the day we met up for coffee or
Yeah.
whatever. I was like, I just need to get out.
Yeah,
Need to get out.
come on.
All right. I'll let you go.
All right.
Thanks again for being
Take care,
here.
Stacey.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guys, thank you so much for being here, for hanging out and listening to our conversation. Yeah, I felt a little nervous, a little rusty, but Jay is very, very easy to talk to, and the writing is extremely easy to read. I really suggest that you go out there and check it out. I will include more links than I already have um, once I get those from Jay. And thanks again for being here. I miss you guys. I will try to get on here like I said, life has taken over. I've been working through a lot of things, and I've been very, very busy with work. And so I'm actually shocked that the dogs are being really quiet right now because I don't have anybody downstairs to keep them from barking, but they've been good. So, anyway, love you guys, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Love ya.